Welcome to this episode of the AEC Engineering and Technology podcast dedicated to helping engineering professionals find technology that fits their needs. In today's episode of our Director of Innovation series, I'll be discussing the integration of new technologies into construction projects and the impact of technology in educational environments with Max Sanchez, founder of Nox Development Group. And with that, let's jump into today's episode. Max, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Happy to be here, Nick. Very happy to be here.
Excellent. So another action-packed episode for the audience. So we'll jump right into it. Max, could you start off by telling us a little bit more about yourself and how your journey into construction and real estate began?
Sure, absolutely. It'll be kind of long, but I think it'll provide context to the rest of the conversation. So, I've been in the industry about 8.5 years now. I really never even wanted to touch the industry, to be honest. My father's been a GC and developer, my uncle also a developer, and I just kind of, family business, I was like, let me try something else. So I was kind of like making music around like when I was 24 years old, 33 now. And basically, one thing led to another where I took a chance and just like kind of looked up one construction company, and it was Suffolk Construction. I don't know if you know who they are, but $4 billion general contractor nationwide based out of Boston. They had some offices in Miami, and they had this position that said Career Start Program. And they basically taught you for 2 years construction. They put you through it's a 2-year rotational program. So they put you through project management, estimating, and the field. And, it seemed like a great opportunity, and I got the job. So it basically took me like 2 days on a job site to realize how massively flawed the entire industry was. A trade partner kind of lied to my face about something, and it was normal. Kind of the response I got was, yeah, it's just the way it is, Max. And, that sort of blew me away, right? Just kind of having this naive mind of no construction experience, suddenly going into this industry, and then just realizing this is how the industry actually flows and works, kind of lit a fire in me. So, I started using technology while I was at Suffolk. I basically said, what's the fastest way to learn? And that's actually through the field. And so I was a superintendent for 4 years. Started using technology, things like open space, also just being innovative and curious, just asking pointed questions, not just to project team, but to the rest of the corporate kind of realm at Suffolk. And so they started to notice, and they basically, this was around 2019, but they started opening up what's called Suffolk Technologies, where they were investing in, various construction technologies. And they put me in this position, which was 7 of us nationwide. We called it the Construction Solutions Director's position. And what we were doing was analyzing the investments we were making and then trying to basically, implement them on our project sites. I was in charge of the Southeast region. So I did that for 2 years. So I did the field for 4 years, then 2 years, kind of this innovation role. And that led me to 2 or 3 problems that I wanted to fix, which led me to where I am now. The first one was, I would do some of these BD presentations for Suffolk, talking about innovation, kind of the different things we did. I would do these presentations to developers. And, basically the developers would tell me to go fly a kite, cool, man, love your passion, love everything you're talking about, innovation. Is it going to save us money? Is it going to save on our bottom line? And, I was the only one that was pretty much passionate about it. And so that led me to just thinking, all right, this industry is massively flawed. It took me 2 days to realize it. There's lots of opportunity in construction technology and innovation, tons of money going into it. People want the industry to change. So how do you actually position yourself to be in a position to make that change? And so I said, well, I got to figure out how to become the developer. And so that's, my company, Nox Development Group. I started it while I was at Suffolk, basically co-GP'd and co-developed 39 units. Don't ask me how I did it, but somehow pulled it off. Got the development experience. And yeah, that's basically, Nox Development Group. And then, 2 other problems arose, which we can talk about kind of later on. How do we know if a construction technology solution works? And how do we get more innovative and creative thinkers into the industry? But yeah, that's a little bit of my background. It's kind of all over the place.
And right back. So 2 days on the job, right? you see issues. And one of the avenues to remedy at least some of what you're seeing is innovation in the field, right? So in your experience with construction innovation, like what are some of the most exciting technologies that you've come across?
So I think this is going to sound super basic, but reality capture is the most exciting solution right now, and actually the most exciting solution for the next 3 to 5 years. And the reason why I say that is because I was on the field dealing firsthand with kind of all the issues and problems that arise. And mainly the problem that would always come up was a miscommunication about current status of work. And, one stakeholder, one project executive will think work is, whatever. Let's say we're talking about installing glass. One project executive will say, oh, well, I think, the work is 90% complete on a certain floor. The subcontractor will say it's 100% complete. The superintendent will say it's actually 70% complete. And so, again, where is like that single source of truth? That's in capturing reality. So to me, the most exciting things to help out the field are actually just simple construction documentation. So super basic, but it's super exciting still.
Simply put, and for the audience, if you're not familiar with reality capture, it is just as it sounds. And one of the solutions Max mentioned earlier, OpenSpace and others like it, essentially tell you, hey, based on photographing the site and other parameters, how much, X percent of work has been installed. That it's not quite as basic as it sounds, but it is fairly simple in concept.
Yeah, and where you're going there is why I say it's so exciting now in the next 3 to 5 years. Like, let's say I'm just a normal construction company. I just started, my company, 5 years ago. I'm doing well. This company should be capturing reality of all their job sites. So then in the next 3 to 5 years, they have all that data that can either be analyzed for progress, which is what some of these new technology companies are doing. They're ingesting these 360 images and then defining progress. So even if you have that historical data, of the last 5 years, that's still going to be important, in the next 5 to 10 years. Just even having that data, like you're going to have a significant advantage as a company if you just start doing that on all your job sites. And so that's kind of like the approach that we're taking, is try to capture as much reality as possible, because who knows what we will be able to do with that data in the next few years.
And one of the things that Max is referring to, right, because just as simply as labor rates, right, if you can understand how much, right, track and drywall you can install per unit of time or other measure, right, even though that data was specifically built for that project, extrapolating and using it for the future can also yield benefits. But also, like Max said, right, there are other use cases for the data that we may not even be dreaming of today.
Yep.
Beautiful. So Max, and reality capture is a good one. I'd just like to know, how do you approach integrating these new technologies into construction projects, especially in an industry that we know is pretty much relying on traditional methods?
Yeah, I mean, the integration is pretty simple. Basically we have like what we call just kind of like project kickoff, project setup meetings with the certain stakeholders of our projects. Like, for example, we have a project in Jacksonville, 42 townhomes. We'll basically, the moment we have the first conversation with a site work contractor, GC, subcontractor, we're telling them kind of the technology stack that we are using. So they already know firsthand that as the conversations progress into a contract, into like, an actual, the project being awarded, they're going to need to essentially like know how to use that tech in order to work with us. So that's kind of the way we integrate it beginning, or like early on in the project. And even if they need to price it out, like use this technology is going to cost X, Y, and Z, sure, like we'll accept that. Just so we know that it's very clear that whatever tech we're using, they're either going to leverage or they're going to use, just depending on what it is.
Understood. Which then is a good segue into my next question. What differences did you observe in the technology decision-making process between large firms and smaller companies like Nox?
Yeah, that's a good one. Let me see the best way to phrase this. So you could have the passion, okay? You could have the passion to use the technology. You can have the technology. You can have the project team all lined up when you're in a corporate role. And then you have to go through about 6 hurdles to actually implement the tech. And those hurdles will be, IT, security, kind of, basically evaluations that need to be done on the security of that technology. You have legal that will stop it or at least look at it and run it through a whole process, that are looking at it from an insurance perspective, and then also from just like, are we covered to be able to use this technology? And then just other stakeholders, maybe innovation arms or whatever it is. So you can have the passion, you can have the tech, but you still have to run through like these processes that, you can lose the fire and momentum of technology innovation when you have to always go through a gate. And so this was the kind of the 2 things that I ran into at Suffolk and at Ryan Companies. And obviously, this is the way that corporate innovation works. But that led me to like, okay, now I'm at Nox. I'm the owner. I'm the founder. If we want to try something, we're just going to try it. And like, if it doesn't work, it's on us, And so I would actually, for your listeners out there, if you are in a corporate role, just try it, man. Just do it. Get your hand slapped. That's really the only way that things are going to change. If you have to go through the cycles every time of innovation and technology and you get stopped and you hit the gate, just do it anyways. That's my advice, because that's the only way that things will change. So,
and also, like Max was saying, right, don't be discouraged because this whole, right, set of hurdles is normal for corporate innovation. It's not any one company, it's not any one region of the world. It's just the way businesses in this industry tend to work. So don't be discouraged if you run into some obstacles.
Yep. Do it anyway. That's my model. Oh, man.
So then Max, right, so you guys in a smaller development group, right, like Nox, you guys are in control of setting the strategy top down as a developer, which, as we've kind of uncovered, right, that's not really the norm. So how do you ensure that you, your team, and your stakeholders are up to date with the latest construction technologies?
That's a good question. I would say it falls into the same category that I spoke about before. We have these project kickoff meetings, and my company is pretty small. It's about 3 or 4 of us, depending on if we're, hiring, people outside or whatever it is for each specific project. But for every project, we have kind of an aligned tech stack. Like we have the homes in Jacksonville. That's a totally different tech stack than a high rise that we're working on here. So as we start the project, it's kind of the same flow and method that I spoke about earlier with the subcontractors. We sit down, this is what we're using, this is where we're storing our files, this is where the budget is going to be held, this is where our operating agreements are going to be held, and just having that kind of tech stack aligned for every single project is how I keep the teams kind of up to date to what we're using. They're not really like, I'm not keeping them up to date on like the general market of construction technology, but I'm keeping up to date. Once that market funnels into a specific project, then this is what we're using, this is how it works, and then we'll set up, demos or whatever it is with the technology vendor. But most of the knowledge comes from me talking to my project teams about the tech we've already sort of chosen. It's not like I'm just sending them a bunch of technology stuff and say, hey, let's use this. It's already like kind of a strategic decision for each project. Does that make sense?
It does, because it is like you mentioned, right? It's kind of like a funnel, right? You're ingesting however many construction technologies, and we'll get into that specifically in a little bit here. But you're giving them kind of a nice funnel approach, right? Like it's all coming in, you're evaluating, what works best per project type, and then you're saying, okay, this is the tech stack we use, and then keeping them up to date specifically on a project by project basis.
Yeah, it's the same thing I did at Suffolk and Ryan Companies, except now I'm the developer. It's literally the same thing, because obviously, as you know, there's almost like 1,000 construction technology solutions or more now in the market. So if our teams are getting hammered by, random vendors and all these things, there has to be a funnel for kind of evaluation and proven technologies that we are already aware of.
Absolutely makes sense. So you mentioned, right, different tech stacks for different projects. So I'm curious, like, what are the specific challenges and opportunities you encounter in different projects, specifically multifamily and charter school development?
Yeah, I thought about this question a little bit. And this is just something I've been deeply thinking about for quite some time. So, I mean, ultimately, the real opportunity in development and construction that I've seen now, and really just kind of being on my own, managing these projects, knowing the construction process, getting more familiar with the development process. Essentially, what's needed is an AI assistant, a virtual AI assistant. I know that sounds like super cliche, but I'll tell you, I watched like this random like anime on Netflix. It's called Godzilla Singular Point. I watched like 1 or 2 episodes. I don't know why, it just kind of intrigued me. But there was this technology that one of the main characters had, which was, it was like a Siri, okay, on your phone that like is always listening to what you're doing and knows exactly who you are, what you're doing, what needs to get done, what you've committed to, and just constantly reminds you of the things that you need to do. And so you'll say something and then the phone will say, "Hey, Max, why'd you say that? You actually said this 3 days ago. You should, whatever, change, do an action based on that." So ultimately what I'm trying to say is, after kind of going through this development process, construction process, I've been in the field, I've been through all of this. What is the most needed is a reminder system, okay, in construction. An AI reminder virtual system that knows how you move and can make you more efficient. That is all that's needed. And I can relate that to, opportunities I saw in the field. When I was in the field at Suffolk, the number one thing I needed to do was have a conversation with somebody outside, come up with an action from that conversation, grab that action, relay it in a written message to the proper stakeholders, okay? And then get that done, right? And so what enables that? A virtual AI assistant is the only thing that is going to be able to do that. And there's a couple of technologies that I've been looking at, like Roger AI. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. They like kind of work with your task log to automate emails, so then they know like when you need to send certain things. I think there's that layer, and then one more step up is the thing that's constantly monitoring you and knows what you said, already generates an email and already sends it. This industry is totally organic, from the development to the construction process. All that organic kind of interactions that need to happen that turn into like actionable written items can be like done through this, dream AI that I'm thinking about. So ultimately, like, I can talk about a million challenges and opportunities. If I can get that virtual AI assistant that's listening to me, knows how I move, and can do action items based on kind of what I discuss with others or kind of what I do, that's it. That's the dream. I hope that made sense. You have to watch that anime.
And to, distill it down, I mean, it sounds like it'd be having like an executive assistant following you around all day, basically with a voice recorder, right? Like everything you said, right? Going through your notes, creating to-do lists, just like you said, right? The issue is, right, like, I don't think we all have the ability to have executive assistants like that, which then the promise of AI is, right, something that's affordable that can actually do what you need it to do for everybody.
Yep. And it's just, it's funny because half the industry is inefficient because we can't have that conversation on the field, then draft it up in an email, then send it to the stakeholders. That gets lost, and then the inefficiencies just start piling up. And by the time you realize it, it's just, you're way past, the threshold point.
Well, and because, right, you have that conversation that instead of taking the next task in that workflow, right, you got to go put out some other fire. And I think everybody that's been in the field for at least a day or two, like, understands how it goes. So I totally understand where you're coming from.
Yep. That's the opportunity, man. Whoever builds that is going to change the game. It'll be soon, though. It'll be very soon, to be honest.
So if you're an aspiring entrepreneur in the audience, there's an idea for you. Take it and see what comes of it.
Yeah, and you're not that far off from it either, because you have your phone is already listening to everything we do anyways. So and I would gladly let my phone listen to everything that I'm doing if I have an assistant that is listening as well. So
absolutely. So Max, another interesting question for you. Can you tell us more about your involvement with Nox charter schools and how technology and innovation play a role in educational environments?
Sure. This was the thing I was the most excited to talk about. So I talked about 3 problems, right? One was, developer top-down approach. 2 was we don't know really if a solution is good or bad. So how do we actually know besides testing it? 3 is that we don't have enough innovative and creative thinkers in the industry. At Suffolk, at Ryan Companies, even at Nox, I'm very passionate about change, technology, and innovation. It's hard to find others that think the same way. I mean, Nick, you are one of them, so that's literally why we are on this podcast together. And it's just hard to find them. And so I believe what has happened over the last probably 20, 30 years is that the image of construction just has been shot down. Like, people think of it as dirty, rugged, rigid, old school, basically not like a fun industry to get in. And what's happening is, all these innovative, creative, outside the box thinkers are getting recruited to the mega companies, Google, Meta, Uber, whatever you want to call it. So how do we get that youth to basically fundamentally change their image of construction and get them into our industry? So this was a problem that, I had deeply thought about for a long time. And ultimately, we went through a bunch of different iterations of what Nox charter schools would look like. First, it was, we'll start a skilled trade school. We'll, do another college. We'll do, an after school program. We went through so many iterations. And ultimately, what we kind of found out was basically a middle school / high school is what we're proposing, by the way, for this. It'll be grades 6 through 12. The reason why is because if we just did a high school, I think the fundamental image of construction already is kind of like flawed and skewed by the time you get to high school. So basically the idea of Nox is, or the concept, the thing that's happening is it's grades 6 through 12. We're not solely focusing on the construction industry. We don't think that's fair to the youth. So we're kind of broadening, the school to basically future of work, essentially industry 4.0, big data, manufacturing, construction 4.0, manufacturing 4.0, gaming, animation, and design. And what we're doing that's kind of unique is in the middle school, in order to get students and the youth excited about the future of construction, the future of manufacturing, we're integrating themes into the lesson plans. So they'll be learning math, social studies, kind of the basic educational needs that we need to abide by the Florida standards. But we're integrating these newish themes of the future of work into everyday lesson plans. And I can, talk about a couple various examples, but that's the whole point, right? So in middle school, we're already influencing the students to kind of like lean towards this new, human and machine collaboration future that's going to enhance basically what skilled trades look like. And so as they finish middle school, they'll get into high school. It's 3 academies: Building and Construction Academy, Gaming and Design Academy, and Entrepreneurship Academy. And the whole reason why I'm doing this development project is because of we don't have enough innovative, creative thinkers in the construction industry. I know that was a mouthful, but basically we're starting a school that's going to inspire students for the future of work.
So you've identified a problem, Max, and it sounds like you're creating a pipeline to solve it. And it's going to take some time, right? People don't grow overnight, as we and everybody else knows, right? But instead of just throwing your hands up and saying, hey, we don't have enough people, we don't have enough skills, we don't have enough resources, you're tackling the problem.
Yeah, I'm a practical guy, man. I see a problem. I'm like, okay, how do we actually do this? This has always been my thing. It's like everyone complains. I go to conferences. I go to a million things about, oh, the labor's running out. We don't have enough technology. We don't have enough innovation. Okay, guys, is anyone going to do anything about this? So this is how we're going to do it. And it kind of combines my development experience with this passion for innovation and change, kind of combining it together and building this great school.
Speaking of practicality, Max, let's talk about every developer's favorite topic, permitting.
Nightmare, dude.
So, in what ways does permit data from expeditionapp.com enhance your project planning and execution, and what benefits have you observed? And then I want you to also talk about like just the traditional permitting process for anybody who's unaware.
So let's actually start there, because I had a conversation the other day about that. So there's kind of two people aren't aware of this, but there's kind of two separate permitting processes. So the first one is entitlements. So if I'm a developer, I buy a piece of land, or I'm looking at a piece of land, I basically need to know, how many units can I build? What type of product can I build? Like based on the land use code and building code and all these things that you need to analyze. And, what is the, FAR, floor area ratio? So how big can we build this thing that we're dreaming of? If let's say you want to build a hotel, but the use of the current use of the property is, I don't know, farmland, you need to go through what's called the entitlement process. So, and I call this like the first permitting process. So basically you'll come up with a site plan, come up with a landscape plan, civil plan, a couple other things, traffic engineering plan, and you submit that to the city to get your use approved. So the zoning needs to be approved. So that is a whole back and forth process with the city. You submit them multiple amounts of documents, which is, already like SD, let's call it schematic design documents. You're getting comments, you're addressing them, and then finally you get your entitlements. So that's one process, okay?
And Max, to this point, how much money have you as a developer made from that first round of permitting?
Made, like in return?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing.
Zero, right? And I want to make that point just because I don't know that everyone understands the development process and how much capital is put forward just to get projects. Forget foundations and out of the ground, but all the planning beforehand. But please continue.
Yeah, and I'll add a little color there. You'll need to buy the land, and then you'll need to do this entitlement process. We call it pre-development costs. Man, that'll be anywhere, depending on what the project is, from 100,000 to 300,000, depending on what you're doing. If you're doing like a single family home, obviously. But if it's a big commercial multifamily project, like, it's going to run you that amount. So yeah, you're already taking a very significant risk in that whole process. And so going back and forth with the city in this entitlement, kind of, hey, does this work? Can we do this? Can the roads be this big? That's kind of what you're determining. You lose a lot of time and you lose a lot of momentum. So that's number one. And by the way, every single jurisdiction is different. So every single jurisdiction is going to have a different entitlement process. So no matter what, even if you learn how to do it in Miami, if you go to Pompano Beach, they're going to have a totally different process. So you can't even learn. That's why you see developers tend to stick to one jurisdiction in one area, because they're already very familiar. So you have that process. Second process, once you get that approved, entitlements are good, then you submit your master construction documents, and then that goes through a back and forth process with the city where they will have their engineers review your plumbing plans, your mechanical plans, the structural plans, everything, basically. The fire, everyone will review your plans, and then ultimately that gives you the permit, okay? What we ran into, and the reason why I built the Expedition app, which, by the way, all it's doing is aggregating open permit data from Miami-Dade and from City of Miami, analyzing it, and telling me the timelines of that number two process. So after entitlements, once you get it entitled, basically the Expedition app is telling me how long it'll take for my construction documents to get approved for me to get a permit. And so the reason why I even did this app, and by the way, it's just something internal that we use. I am going to share it to the public eventually, but it's just an app that we use internally right now. But basically the idea was, how do we know if an architect, if an engineer can get those plans approved fast? So when I talk to, an architect or a plumbing engineer or an MEP engineer, I ask them the question, how long is this going to take to get approved? And usually they have no idea, because they'll say, oh, the city takes this long, X, Y, and Z. So this permit data that I've aggregated tells me how long it'll take to get your master construction documents approved. It'll actually give me how long the contractor typically takes to build these types of projects, because you could basically categorize, hey, I'm building a new construction multifamily 10,000 square foot project, and it's going to take on average this time to get approved, this time to actually complete the project. So from the moment the permit started to the moment it's finalized, the cost to build, and then the total length of that whole process. So even aggregating all that information, it's still hard to manage that back and forth process, because every project is different, and every project and the city acts differently on an hourly basis. So yeah, I can spin that into a million different directions. So I don't know if you have any questions.
Well, and instead of doing one of these, and you're just asking based on what pretty much just amounts to qualitative data, you're pulling actual data from open sources that are going to give you a better estimate than just trying to come up with something. I am curious though, if you brought that to either an experienced developer, let's say somebody in your family who's been in the area a while, how have the estimates compared from the Expedition app to somebody's gut feel who's been in the business a while? And then I guess eventually you'll figure out how that compared for any given specific project once it's completed.
That's correct. Yeah, we actually have a single family home that we're going to test it on to basically, and the reason why I did it, by the way, is when I was co-developing those units, we just didn't know how long things would take. Is this contractor even good? Because that permit data will tell you if they're good too, or at least if they've completed projects in a timely manner. Yeah, that our plan is to track that against. But, just kind of gut feeling as we've done some pre-development on some projects here in Miami, it's pretty spot on what I'm pulling from the open sources. Just kind of in the conversations with the land use attorneys, with various GCs, the system will say 300 days and they're saying, it'll take a year. So 65 days, I mean, that's actually a lot, but something like that,
Well, it's good to see, when you can run something through this analysis, but then you can gut check it with seasoned professionals, And I think as long as they're in the same ballpark, it's a great start. And then this is only going to get better with the more projects you do and end up completing.
Correct. The main goal of it, this was the vision, was basically to kind of do the Moneyball formula for real estate development. So can I plug in this engineer, this contractor, this type of project, this type of jurisdiction? What is the risk that I plugged in all these different people? What is the risk profile now of this project? And if I remove this contractor and put in somebody else, now how long is the project going to take? Now how long is it going to cost? Now how long is it's going to take to build? And so that's the ultimate idea. We're super early stages. And like you said, actually the most important thing is to do an analysis beforehand, complete a project, and then see how it kind of aligned. So we still have yet to do that. But once we do that, I think, we're basically building a Miami supercomputer. So it's really exciting, to be honest. I'm super pumped about that.
And I think with the advent of artificial intelligence becoming more readily available to the average person, computing power and all of these things, it sounds to me like it's a pretty good time to kind of embark on something like this regardless.
Yep. And now you need just the AI system to go through that open permit data and tell me something in real time as I'm having a conversation with somebody. I got to show you that anime, man. It blew my mind, I swear.
The Jarvis of real estate development.
Yep. That's what you need.
So let's go, Max. Let's talk about another one of your projects, contactreviews.com. So you had mentioned earlier, there are a lot of solutions. So how is the site, all the data that's aggregated, reviews, people coming together, how does that influence the future adoption of Contact?
Yeah, I think, Contact Reviews was started again because of that second problem. We didn't know if a solution was good or a solution was bad. And it was a database that I had built up over the years. And so I translated that database into what we call it's kind of like a blog type website right now. The future of it is me reviewing every single one of those solutions that I have there individually, myself. Now, the only thing is why I'm not moving forward with that in a timely manner is because I'm not testing every single one of the solutions. So it's only kind of like my opinion on what I think the solution is. And so I haven't started that journey yet, but I think that's kind of the future of it. And then ultimately, maybe, okay, it can become some sort of, marketplace. That's the idea. But where we're going to start is me reviewing, all the various solutions. Because, I started it in June, and we reached out to plenty of folks to try to get organic reviews, and it's kind of difficult. So, that's kind of, it's not like we stopped, but I said, well, okay, this is more like a blog/review site that I can continue to build up, my knowledge of the construction tech space and get it kind of out there,
Sounds like any organic reviews are kind of the icing on the cake of what you were planning on doing anyway.
Yep.
Beautiful. Max, this has been a great conversation. Actually, the second developer we've had on the show, so it is great to kind of learn more from you in a different perspective than I think a lot of the audience is used to. So to conclude, like, what piece of advice would you offer to engineers and technologists looking to innovate within the construction industry?
Yeah, I already gave it to you. Do it anyways. Besides the hurdles, besides the price, get it done. Make people think differently, and ultimately you will be rewarded. It'll take some time. You'll get laughed at. You'll get pushed to the curb, but eventually you'll persevere, and people will look at you and say, that's why he wanted to use tech. That's why he wanted to be innovative, because now we're doing things like this because of his momentum. So do it anyway.
Practical advice from a practical guy. So Max, thank you again so much for joining us today. What's the best way for the audience to connect with you if they have any more questions on some of the topics we discussed?
I think I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so follow me on LinkedIn, Maximiliano Sanchez. I have parentheses Max. You could also visit our development website, noxdevelopmentgroup.com, and then contact reviews if you want to check that out as well.
Beautiful. And for anyone that ends up following Max on LinkedIn, look out for his Sunday motivational posts, because they are packed with some good nuggets to keep us all moving in the right direction. But again, Max, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Nick. It's been a pleasure.
Please remember, you can find the show notes for this episode at aectechpodcast.com. There, you will find a summary of the key points discussed in today's episode, as well as links to any of the resources, websites, or books mentioned during this episode. Until next time, I wish you the best in all of your engineering and technology endeavors. Thank you.